has worked as the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary, that's a mouthful, since 2000. Prior to that, she taught outdoor education at ocean and coastal locations, including working as a seasonal interpretive park ranger with the National Park Service. As an educator, Jenny works to bring the sanctuary to people through various means, from exhibits to training teachers and a little bit of everything in between. Starting in 2017, Jenny had the opportunity to participate in 2 deep sea exploration missions off the Sonoma Coast. She did these ship-to-shore presentations with students in museums from throughout the country, and she participated as part of the science team that was on a live feed to the internet during these expeditions, where she helped interpret the science that was coming from these expeditions. And she continues to do that today. Another special connection, Jennifer's husband, Joe Kenyon, manages our computer mapping resources at Sonoma Land Trust. And together they bring their love of the land and the ocean together. They share it with us, which we're so grateful, as well as imparting it to their beloved 10-year-old son, who I hope is watching tonight, but maybe he's doing homework, I don't know. But with that, I will hand it over to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Shannon, for that lovely introduction, and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm hoping to take you on an adventure and show you some things that you may not have seen before when visiting the coast on Sonoma. So let me just do a quick screen share so I can get you all situated. Okay, does that look good, Shannon?
It does, looks great.
Great. So before I get started, I actually really want to hear from our audience really quick. National Marine Sanctuaries are not well known in our country, and I'd love to hear from all of you. And Shannon, I think you've prepared a question for the audience to give some feedback.
We've got a little poll. If you would just take a second to see the poll that should be popping up on your screen, and then just click on your answer, that would be great. Bear with us. Hello to Ellie Rila out there and all of our awesome volunteers while I'm stalling a little bit. Oh, there it is. Okay. So before today, had you ever heard of the National Marine Sanctuaries? Click yes or no. All right. Wow. It's coming in fast. 90+% of the respondents are saying yes.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's just great to hear, because a lot of people are not aware of these special places, but if you're a lover of the land, you're probably a lover of the ocean as well here on Sonoma. So thank you so much for that. So I'm going to take you on a little adventure, and we're going to go beyond the coastline here and take a look. And before I go too far, I have to introduce my family, because Joe works here at the Sonoma Land Trust as the GIS manager, and he's our land guy, and I'm the ocean gal. And the Sonoma Coast is actually a really important place to our family for coming together, for adventure, for relaxation. And it's the protected places that we have with coastal places like the Jenner Headlands and the Estero property, and can't wait to explore the new property that just got transferred to the parks. We really live in the most treasured place, and I'm so grateful to live here and on the edge with everybody. So I'm really happy to have this part of my family be part of my work as well. So we got to go to the Jenner Headlands. This is a picture from the Jenner Headlands right around when the Sonoma Land Trust acquired it. And we got to go on the property, and I got up top and I just thought, God, this place has a lot of perspective here for thinking about the watershed up the Russian River right there, emptying into the Pacific Ocean and the National Marine Sanctuaries. And I felt this great opportunity of like bringing those two together. And so I actually had suggested maybe I could do something for the Sonoma Land Trust at some point. And I'm so glad we were able to do that tonight, because we are talking about virtual things. So why not do it virtually? So Out at the Jenner Headlands is this lovely overlook with a telescope, and I just love this interpretive element because it points to these really key, beautiful pieces that you witness here on the Pacific Ocean, right at the edge of the headland. So I encourage you to go check it out sometime. So we're going to take a peek at that water back there and go below the waves and take a look. But before I do that, we're going to have a little oceanography lesson. And we're going to look globally here for a moment to come back into the Sonoma Coast. So we live on this amazing part of the world, the eastern part of the Pacific. And here's the technology, the high terminology term, and we live in an eastern boundary current. It's the eastern boundary of the Pacific Ocean. And there's 4 major places on our planet that have currents like these that are associated with what we call upwelling, meaning cold water comes up from the depths and nourishes this amazing food web. And with that upwelling comes this incredible biodiversity. And it's so biodiverse that even though these 4 areas only take up less than 1% of our total blue planet, 75% of the planet is ocean, these 4 areas provide up to 20% of the world capture fisheries because of that incredible amount of biodiversity. So we are living in one of the most precious places on the planet here on the California coast. And we are smack dab in the middle of it here on the Sonoma Coast. So what happens with upwelling is it's a spring and summertime process. And we have other processes happening throughout the rest of the year. But at this time in spring and summer, upwelling happens where we get these winds barreling down the coast. It's a tough time to go to the beach because you're pulling sand out of your hair and sand out of your ears. But that wind is a big driver for moving surface waters away and bringing up cold water from the depths. And that cold water is full of nutrients of things that have rained down to the seafloor because they decompose. And they act like fertilizer, much like we fertilize a garden. It acts like fertilizer to those surface waters where there's phytoplankton. But phytoplankton are microscopic algae, and they are the base of the food web. And so when they start to expand in their population, the zooplankton, the animal plankton that are microscopic drifters, they start eating the phytoplankton, and then the fish and the invertebrates are like, oh, there's all this food. We should lay our eggs now. And so we get this very fertile pea soup in the ocean and becomes very thick. And that just draws in more and more animals to eat all that food. We have the fish and the squid that then benefit from all that. And that draws in larger predators, the whales, seabirds, turtles, sharks, dolphins. And so we have this incredible phased food web that's all oriented around upwelling. Now with climate change, we also know that upwelling is a curse and a blessing. It's a blessing and a curse because with upwelling also comes acidified water and low oxygen water, which is going to be a challenge as we go forward in our ocean conditions. But this is what makes this place so special, is this incredible system. So this draws animals from all around the Pacific Ocean to come eat here. So just like humans travel to San Francisco to eat some of the best food, it draws animals thousands of miles away to come here because the food is guaranteed. So we have shearwaters coming up from New Zealand, pink-footed shearwaters coming up from Chile, leatherback sea turtles coming all the way across from Indonesia to eat jellyfish. And my favorite, albatrosses, they come from the Northwest Hawaiian Islands and travel here to Cordell specifically. They love Cordell Bank. And during the albatross breeding season, which is in the spring months, those albatrosses have been documented coming to Cordell Bank 2 to 3 times and bringing food back to their chicks. So thousands of miles to fly to bring that food there. The food's good here, but their breeding habitats are in preferred other places. So we're lucky we have the food to give them. So it's just a big draw for a lot of big animals. It also supports a lot of local fisheries, all that food in the water. So supporting a Dungeness crab population and a salmon population. And that has generated food for communities and supporting coastal communities to provide locally caught sustainable seafood. And so this big biodiversity supports humans as well, which we benefit from having all this local seafood. So a long time ago, the government started taking action to protect special places on land, and we started the National Park Service in 1916, and that's to protect special cultural areas, places that have been pivot points in our history, biologically valuable areas, geologic formations, and the history of the Park Service goes back to 1916. We didn't really look to the ocean until the 70s, early 70s, and the blue marble image that came from when we went out to the moon and looked back at Earth, and they saw that blue marble, there was a kind of a consciousness raised at that time about the preciousness of the planet and how much water there was. And there was also an oil spill in 1969 in Santa Barbara that really generated a lot of awareness about our interconnectedness with the ocean's health. And so several laws were passed in the 70s, and the National Marine Sanctuaries were born into a program as part of NOAA. And so that was just 49 and a half years ago. Next year is our 50th anniversary. So we are one program underneath NOAA, which has several programs. And NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which studies the ocean and atmosphere. So this is just a little snapshot of some of these national marine sanctuaries, beautiful habitats of very many different ocean and Great Lakes habitats. So that's one of the things that's unique. We do have some Great Lakes in the National Marine Sanctuary Program. We call them the Sweetwater Seas, and we're all a blue planet, so they put them in our program, which is lovely. And they protect some amazing shipwrecks that tell incredible history of our time and are part of our history books, that they're living in these lakes. So we have Sweetwater Seas, and then we have our ocean sanctuaries too, from the East Coast to the Gulf of Mexico. We have 5 national marine sanctuaries on the West Coast, which is very telling about that California current. And then we have the 2 marine national monuments out in the Pacific, the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. I've been practicing saying that, so maybe someday they'll let me go there. And the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale Sanctuary too. So we are a program that's growing. I had to update my slide for this presentation because the Wisconsin Shipwreck Coast National Marine Sanctuary was just designated in July. And Lake Ontario is a section of one of the lakes there that borders, I believe, New York, and I'm not sure the geography there, but that's an area being considered for becoming a national marine sanctuary as well. And so each of these places were designated at different times and with community involvement. And usually it's communities that propose an area to be designated as a national marine sanctuary because of its value to a community, whether it be historical resources, cultural landscapes, or actual ecosystems themselves. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of the protections that we offer in some of the slides coming up. So I want to tell you about our local ones right here. And the Gulf of the Farallones National Marine Sanctuary was designated in 1981, and Cordell Bank was added in 1989. Nobody knew much about Cordell Bank until the late 70s and 80s, and there was a group of divers that dove Cordell and found it to be this amazing area, so it got added on as a separate National Marine Sanctuary in 1989. But together, both these places did so much great work. And one of the great things that being a national marine sanctuary does is to prohibit oil and gas exploration. And so communities up the coast of us said they really wanted to see national marine sanctuaries expanded up the coast to protect the waters on the coast up north. So working with the public, we had a public process and environmental impact statements. The sanctuary is officially expanded in 2015, and so we've doubled in size, adding in more unique habitats, more precious habitats, and most significantly, the source waters for the upwelling that we benefit from down in this region here in the Marin-Sonoma area actually are generated up in Point Arena. So they come up the coast up at Point Arena, and then they move down the current down south over time. So we're all interconnected now. And so adding all this water added a lot of opportunity for exploration of places that we didn't really know anything about in terms of the seafloor. Cordell Bank added the Bodega Canyon area, that little worm that you see right above the word Cordell. And Cordell Bank itself kind of looks like a little thumbprint right there on the map. So we're going to take you on a little tour of these places in just a minute. So when we go to the coast, this is what we see for the most part, blue water. And I want you to think for a second, just in your mind's eye, of what it looks like out the window of your house, and take away all the pavement, take away the roads, take away the trees, and you see a landscape. There's flat lands, there's hills, there's mountains, there's gullies, there's rivers, there's streams. And that is what the seafloor looks like as well off the coast. It's just covered in water. And so we've had to develop a technology to be able to get through that water to take a look at it. And we want to know what's there because in order to protect it, we need to know what's there. So exploration has been a big part of our mission to help contribute information to making smart decisions about this area. So how do we know where to go? This is a whole lot of water and our cameras can only go so far. So we want to be really efficient with our time. So we have to map first. And so we work with partners, specifically with the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, to learn about our seafloor through mapping. And mapping is where we send down what's called a towfish, that little red thing, and it sends out sound waves to the seafloor, and we measure the rate of return on the way back, and it creates a map. And it tells us a lot of details about the depth, the feature, is it rocky, is it soft, is it steep? And all of that is really important information for targeting where we want to go explore, because we want to target the areas that have rock, because a lot of these animals that we want to see attach to rock. They can't really attach to shifting sand and shifting mud. They just wouldn't be able to get a hold. So we're always looking for the rock. So we've had opportunities in the past. I've been with the sanctuaries for 21 years. And when I first started, we were exploring with a remote, with a submersible, which I had an opportunity to go in, but they're not that efficient compared to ROVs, which can go for days as long as the weather conditions hold. So we've had a couple different opportunities to use these remotely operated vehicles, or ROV, over the years. But 2017 was a really exciting year because we were able to work with the Ocean Exploration Trust, with the exploration vessel Nautilus, this ship right here, 210 feet, and go to the sanctuary areas that we hadn't seen before in the newly expanded sanctuary. And I got to tell you just a couple things about this ship because it's pretty special. It holds, well, there's about a permanent crew of 13, and they're the ones who maintain the ship, making sure we have fresh water and food and it's clean and that we're safe. And then there's a crew for 31 scientists to come on board. And the scientists are a mix of engineers, ROV pilots, camera people, people who fix things on the ROV, pilots, and also communications people. And so I got to serve in that role in communications, looking over the shoulder of my scientist colleagues and learning and sharing what we knew with the public. And so what you see on the back of the boat, there's a big ball there, and that is a way to beam to a satellite, which beams to the computers, so people can watch the exploration live from their computer. And I'll share some websites with you at the end if you'd like to tune into any live expeditions happening now. But it also allowed us the opportunity to talk with people, and you'll see a little bit more about that in a little bit. But this ship has the capacity to go for a long period of time offshore. So instead of coming back every night, we just stay offshore the entire time and sleep in the boat and get used to moving around like that. And it has a great tandem ROV system. This is Hercules, the ROV, the yellow ROV, and Argus. And that tethered system allows us to have an ROV at depth that's super stable. And then Argus kind of acts like a little bit of a ballast to make sure that Hercules is stable, because you have the ocean moving, you have wind, you have waves and swell, and you have this tether connecting it all together. And if the boat goes up and down, you don't want the ROV to be going up and down. And so they have an incredible amount of science and engineering to make sure that Hercules stays solid because it's at extreme depth. Anyway, that's pretty exciting technology, and this is pretty advanced for us. We have a smaller ROV that you'll see too in some pictures. So here's a little video of Hercules launching. And those are some pretty nice sea conditions out there. It's quite a big vehicle. You can see the some of the sampling gear on the side, some push cores and a sampling arm. It has there's a you can see on the back there's some propellers, and you can see where the tether is, and that tether is a fiber optic cable that brings the video signal from the seafloor through the cable up to the boat and then out to the internet. And having it connected to the internet allows scientists to participate from around the world remotely. And so we actually had specific scientists that specialize in certain things tuned in remotely with us and communicating with us on the ship. So specifically around sampling, we would have those scientists chiming in on the computers. So that's a nice launch. And as you can see, on heavy sea conditions, that is not a fun activity. They do not like to launch and retrieve the vehicle when we have heavy seas and wind, and you know, it changes pretty quickly offshore out there. So here's a little close-up of underneath. We have cameras and lights and a Biobox underneath there, and a shelf. There's a little slurp. I'm going to try to pull up the little laser here. This little thing here is a little slurp to get little soft things. These are the push cores and the bio boxes. And we do take samples occasionally if we see multiple of a specific species that we don't know what it is. And we work with experts at the California Academy of Sciences to help us with that. Gary Williams has come on a lot of our cruises. He's a deep sea coral expert, and helps us to target species that are good to collect because we may not have what's called a voucher specimen. And a lot of these things need to be identified under a microscope because they're such finite anatomy to them. So this is what it's like up in the van. So after the vehicle launches, we're all pretty excited because the cameras are on and we rush up to our screens, and we're on top of the boat. So again, moving like this, it takes like 3 days to get used to that. And there's all these screens here. So you have the ROV pilots on the right and a navigator who's communicating with the bridge. That's the captain. And the screen here on the right would be our lead scientist. And then the screen on the left would be the seat that I would sit in as a support. And then to the left, there is a data logger who's logging every single piece of data, a snapshot, a video, a sample, all of it geo-referenced. And so we walk off the ship with a ton of data. So it's a pretty exciting place, and these screens are big and beautiful. So I call it deep sea snorkeling because it feels like it's right in front of your face to see, which is pretty exciting. So when we collect specimens, we spend hours after the vehicle comes up processing them to be properly labeled and preserved so that they can be studied. And sometimes we send them off to other institutions that have experts for taxonomy. This is a particularly cool picture of a sponge because those spicules, they have these glassy spicules that stick out. You do not want to get sponge spicules on your skin. It is extremely irritating. And that's because sponges and corals at these depths have a lot of toxins in them because they don't move. They're stationary. And so they've had to evolve ways to prevent predators from eating them. And so they have extremely good responses for keeping predators away. So good that these are actually incredibly important species for medicine. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So we're going to take you on a tour to 4 places, and we're going to start up the coast, off the coast of Sea Ranch, and then move our way down. And you can see in relationship to a couple of the coastal properties that the Sonoma Land Trust protects. So the first one is in Greater Farallones, and this is a place I got to go on this cruise. This was 2019, and we did 2 dives between these depths of just under 6,000 feet, and the shallowest being 524 feet. And exploring, learning about the habitat, getting a good idea of what lives on the seafloor there. And so I have a couple little video clips to show that give you a little picture of what it looks like. And so this is a cat shark.
Danny,
and lots of.
could I interrupt for 1 sec? Maybe let's turn off our cameras and see if that helps the bandwidth a little bit when you show the videos. They're a little jerky.
Okay, that might be a little tricky because I'm going to have to.
Okay, if it's too tricky, don't worry about it.
Because I'm full screen, I can't see you.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what happened, but I'm full screen.
Carry on, carry on. Looks great.
Okay. So this is a cat shark. These are a deep sea shark. They're a couple feet long and some sea urchins. This is a fun little decorator crab. Excuse me.
It was vicious.
So this is a crab that takes excuse me, sponges and
anemone, not
anemones and
crab.
puts it on its back.
Crab eating an
I
anemone.
see.
And that's a way to camouflage so that they're not seen by other
Any idea on
animals.
species?
And this one is probably a pretty old one because it has so much stuff on it.
Back row is like
Just
shaking
ripping
their
it apart.
heads.
This is, we're in shallow water,
Yeah.
relatively speaking. I'm not
It's
good
like
at that.
just tearing off chunks. I think because the smooth part is too.
I'm going to move along because I'm running low on time and I have a lot of other video to show you. But it's just really fun to watch these crabs do their thing underwater. And let's see, here's a flapjack octopus and a rockfish. So it looks kind of like a pancake that's flattened out and with these little flappy ears. This one wasn't moving very much. And that little rockfish is hanging out. I think that's a green spot. And then giant Pacific octopus we see as well. And you might see some sea cucumbers there on the floor. Those green dots are to measure things that we see at depth so that we can get an accurate measurement. It's really cool. Some sea stars there under the ledge. And this is another type of crab, and I'm not obsessed with crabs, but what's really cool about this is that there is tons of krill. And on this dive, we could barely see a couple feet away from the cameras because there was so much krill. And krill are these tiny little shrimp that are really important food source for so many animals. And it was a really good krill day at this moment. You just see all this krill drifting in front of this crab, and then it'll zoom out and you'll see just how dense it is. And there's some canary rockfish and a lingcod eating the krill. So that was pretty cool to see all that krill. There's a little picture of krill on a fingertip to give you an idea about the size. So this is a sea star called Rathbanaster, and it looks like a sunflower star, but it's not. I'm going to just turn the volume down on this. The sunflower stars sadly are endangered now. They were hit really hard by the sea star wasting disease event that happened a couple years ago. And this is another type of deep sea star called a Rathbanaster. They look so similar. But what's really cool here is the krill. They was actually eating the krill. Krill were like sticking to their arms, and we would observe the arms going underneath their belly to their mouth. So that was brand new for many of us to see sea stars eating krill. You can kind of see it right there on the sticking to the tentacles. All right, so that was that area up north. Now we're moving a little bit further south to an area that we call the football, and mainly because it has this shape of a football under the water. I was not part of this cruise. This was in 2014, and you'll see in the video, it's a different ROV. This was off our research vessel that the sanctuaries operate, and this is a really cool little video showing a lot of different things that they saw in this habitat. And there's a little bit of music that'll come through as well. So sea lions love to be in front of the camera. All right, I hope some of that came through for the bandwidth issues that might be happening, but just an amazing diversity of animals. And you can see how that rocky habitat becomes such an important place for so many different invertebrates and fishes to hang out. So they discovered a new species during this cruise of coral. Gary Williams identified this and they named it Swiftia farallonesica. It's a type of a Gorgonian deep sea coral. So that was amazing to find a whole new species. It's amazing when we start exploring what we actually find. So then coming down a little bit further south, this is in the Bodega Canyon. Now we're in the Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary. And this is the cruise. I got to participate on both of these, 2017 and 2019. So I'm showing a mix of photos and videos from that. But we did 2 areas of exploration, but Box Canyon, which is on the shelf break. So that's just off the shelf where it goes to deeper water. And then Bodega Canyon. And we had never laid eyes before in Bodega Canyon. So it was a lot of excitement, anticipation to get to go into the canyon. And we did a pretty deep dive down to 10,000 feet in 2019 to get in and really see what is down there right on the western edges of that. So here's a little video showing some highlights. This is from 2017, and these videos are also on the web. So if we're missing them now, we'll send a link and a follow-up to give you the links online. So you're going to hear some excited biologists. Remember, we're all mic'd up and we're talking to people on the internet, and so you're going to hear a lot of scientists that have been on long watches and are getting really googly-eyed about certain animals. So just watch it. You'll hear that.
Here in Bodega Canyon, that's about 15
Some beautiful
miles
bubblegum coral right
northwest
there.
of San Francisco, completely in Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary. Look, there's a beautiful
Oh, cool.
octopus.
He's on the run.
Look at all the sediment that's got on him.
Oh my goodness.
That is wild.
That's gorgeous.
So,
Oh, hey.
Oh,
Good morning.
oh very
Okay.
nice.
Wow. Either you can't push core here, I won't let you.
That's my
What you doing?
sediment.
That is awesome.
Hello.
Oh, nice little skate. Oh, it's
Nice.
pretty.
Hello.
Beautiful.
And that is a he.
How can you tell that it's a male skate?
It has the little claspers behind the tail. Underneath the tail.
That's a sea pen with a
Sea-
grill star on it. There.
They just get that there because it's probably more food, or
Yeah, it's a better efficiency for feeding because it's up high above the substrate, so you're in the current getting more food that way.
Oh, that snailfish.
Right in front of us here?
Yeah.
All right.
It's pretty.
Look at that.
Hey,
Oh,
look
what?
Look up.
I think he might be busy eating. Is he eating? Or is he just kind of holding on?
Let's have a snack. Yeah, that's some good ones.
in the Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary, a lot of the sea life, it's so rich because of this upwelling. These cold waters from the deep rise up and meet the warmer waters at the surface. And this variation in water temperature allows for phytoplankton to thrive and larger organisms to feed off that. And so this marine snow created by those organisms to fall down to the depths, which gives rise to all these deep sea ecosystems, which are nourished by energy in the marine snow and in plankton that's falling in front of the camera right now.
Wow. Oh my God. See, that thing has been around.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
Look at those legs.
Yeah.
Looks like a daddy long leg of the deep.
I just found on a NOAA website that sea spiders usually are found in the deep, and they can grow quite large, spanning almost 3 feet.
Wow, that is massive. Wow, there's so many sponges on our overhang. Yeah, I love that Picasso
That's a
sponge.
nice clean house.
And there's a little guy, a little flatfish right there too.
Yeah, a little
Oh, did you see that? Oh.
They're so tiny.
that fish is big.
It's a nice sized fish.
Yeah.
It's like
So
40
two
or so.
dorsal fins is a sable fish.
So it's a sable
excellent.
fish?
Yeah, let's
Oh, that's such a good
Perfect, yeah.
shot. Oh, that's a good
Beautiful.
jelly.
Good
Yes.
jelly.
It's like a
Hello.
really beautiful color. Oh, look at that. Looks like a little hat. Showing off.
Showing off. You're
So pretty.
beautiful.
We don't sound so sciencey when we're gushing, but it's pretty exciting to see these things and be around people that are super excited about it. So some of the highlights you just saw in that video, but I wanted to draw attention to the corals. We saw over 21 species that we didn't even know were in this area. And most significant are these bamboo corals that have these little nodes on them. They look like bamboo. And we're working with a woman at Bodega Marine Lab who's doing her PhD in bamboo corals, and Karina Fish, and she took some samples of these, and she's using them to basically get a paleo history of the ocean conditions, because these are such slow growing corals. They lay down these rings that they can analyze later on in the lab and basically tell us the conditions of the ocean as old as this coral may be. So it's amazing what we can learn from these species. The bamboo coral, and there's some cup corals, and there's a mushroom coral there. And these are long-lived species, grow very slow, just a couple millimeters a year, living in this deep, deep water, and rely on all that marine snow that rains down that you heard about. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on the tube worms, but this is actually pretty cool because we didn't have this sighting before, and these are basically a type of worm that lives in methane seeps. And so we're thinking that we have a methane seep in the sanctuary down in deep Bodega Canyon because they actually get their energy by the seeps of the chemicals out of the rock. And so very scientific process. They don't have mouths to eat. They basically benefit from that methane. So this was pretty interesting that we were observing these in Bodega Canyon. And there'll definitely be more to learn about that. We had some range and depth extensions of species that were sighted, and they're all funny shapes and sizes, but working with Cal Academy, we're able to really learn about like the ranges of these animals. Every time there's a deep sea expedition, all the scientists share, there's databases, and so we're learning more through every single expedition of where these animals live. We also identified a new species of sponge. I call it the frilly tutu sponge, but it's Pharea cordelli. So this was pretty exciting that we were able to identify a whole new species of sponge. And then last but not least is our prettiest feature, and that is the Cordell Bank itself. And this is about 20 miles west of Bodega Bay, also off of the coast of Point Reyes National Seashore Lighthouse. And this is a rocky feature on the continental shelf, and it's the shallowest of all that I showed you. The shallowest point being 115 feet below the surface. So most of the bank is between 140 to 300 or so feet. And these upper reefs are the prettiest. They have the most amount of invertebrate life on them because there's a lot of plankton in the water up there. There's still some sunlight in those upper reaches of the water. And when you have this invertebrate covered reef, it just draws in other animals, other invertebrates that are more mobile, but also fish. These are juvenile rockfish, and they love Cordell Bank. We've seen over 40 species of rockfish at Cordell Bank. So a lot of these fish will use the nooks and crannies. This is some pink hydrocoral and strawberry anemones. But I just love seeing their beady eyes. They're really fun. Here's a little video that is from an ROV cruise of Cordell Bank, and it looks very gray because the ROV lights are not on the habitat, and at this depth, the red wavelengths of the sun are filtered out. So when you get close with the lights, you'll start to see the pinks and the reds. But keep your eyes open there. There's a sea lion that dove down. So this is probably like 150 feet or so. And there's a sea lion diving on the bank. And then watch the lights as they get closer. It just lights up that carpet of invertebrates. And they're all filter feeding in the plankton, benefiting from all that food in the water. It's just beautiful. So why do we do all this exploration? Well, in order for us to protect, we have to know what is there. And there are decisions that have to be made when it comes to dealing with oil spills, which happen. You know, ships collide. We're living in shipping lanes out here with San Francisco Bay. Other activities that could damage the seafloor. So in order for us to be able to make good decisions, you have to have information about what lives there. And so by looking under the sea, we start to see all this different marine life and the habitats and how they're connected to each other and which species are vulnerable and dependent on certain types of conditions. There are a lot of threats to deep sea communities. Climate change is, of course, the big driver of so many processes in the ocean, and that'll affect the food web and eventually will affect the deep sea. Harmful fishing gear that rolls along the seafloor can be extremely detrimental to deep sea habitats because they're such slow-growing habitats. Oil spills are a potential damage to deep sea habitats because this is a picture from the deep sea horizon, I believe, in the Gulf of Mexico, where there's just oil blowouts, and that oil with dispersants was sunk to the bottom and just destroyed these habitats. And also marine debris. When we first dove into into Bodega Canyon, we just had all this anticipation. What are we going to see? And we're actually kind of worried that it was just going to be mud. And the first thing we saw was a plastic water bottle, and it was kind of a bummer to see that. But our reach, our human touch, does not have any boundaries and has reached the deep sea as well. And while the deep sea is largely unexplored, having 75% of our planet ocean, what we do know about it is that we have incredible connections to it, and there's a lot of value to it. For humans, there's a ton of energy and medical benefits for society, especially within sponges, anemones, and corals. These soft sponges and corals I was telling you about have this incredible potent medicine that's part of their protection, and that humans, we've explored and learned how to make medicines from them to help benefit us. So there's quite a bit of research that's been done in that. In fact, a couple of them have been important for COVID. I believe remdesivir, one of the COVID treatments, is actually derived from sea sponge. So it's just really amazing to think of those connections. There's also some species in the deep sea that what we do scrub CO2, they eat it up, they transfer it and bury it. And there's areas in the ocean that have these mats of bacteria that can do that. That's something that we need to know more about. There have also been species that have been an inspiration for making things that have been beneficial to society. So biomimicry of animals. And then, of course, supporting the ecosystems itself and supporting all the animals that rely on these habitats that we ultimately do benefit from too on land. But we're finding new nurseries in these areas that are deep and species that are very valuable. So how do we protect these habitats in the Greater Farallones and Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuaries? Well, within our legislation and our designation and our regulations, we have a prohibition of no oil and gas exploration within the boundaries. We have prohibition on seafloor disturbance, which is a really important one when you think about these really precious habitats on the seafloor. So activities like laying cables for communication or potentially large-scale energy projects down the line. We have regulations to be extremely careful about where things like that could potentially happen. We also have regulations to protect water quality, and living outside a major urban area with so much shipping traffic and cruise ships moving, these are really important for preventing dumping anywhere near these waters. And while not in regulation, our programs for research, for learning about the environment and collaborating with scientists all over the place to best understand the conditions in these waters, having resource protection programs to be responsive to emergencies and prepare for things that come up. We've had oil spills, we've had ships gone down, we've had ships come ashore, and having staff to be able to help respond to minimize damage is really helpful. And of course, education, so people know about our beautiful ocean and all the incredible species and habitats that we have and should be caring about. So can we help? How this is something that comes back to us. We need to reduce our carbon dioxide. I don't need to talk about that too much. We all know this is such a big need for so many parts of ocean health and our health on land too. Learning about and getting involved with marine protected areas. There's the state MPAs here in California, but also National Marine Sanctuaries. There's 4 in California. Supporting organizations that help protect the ocean, refusing single-use plastic. This is something we can all do. And share with people the amazing awe and wonder right off our coast. This is one of the things that I really encourage everybody to do every day. If you saw something today that is new to you and interesting, please share that. I don't think enough people know about just how precious our ocean is right here. When I show pictures of the colors of Cordell, there's a lot of wows and incredible surprises. So please do share what amazing resources we have right off our coast. These are a couple websites that you can go to get more information. Deepoceaneducation.org is really for educators, but some great information for everybody, and has links for all the live expeditions happening, doing ocean exploration where you can watch live from home, including Nautilus Live. So we've worked with Nautilus Live in the past. We don't have any, I don't think any cruises coming up this year with them, but there are probably some other areas that you might be interested in exploring as well with them. And I just want to thank all the other collaborators that we've worked with to do this work, from other ocean exploration organizations, the California Academy of Sciences, our nonprofit partners. We do this with a lot of different people engaged to help learn about so we can best protect these areas. And keep exploring, stay curious, and get outside. And I know I'll be able to answer some questions tonight, but I'm also available to take questions via email. If you want to send me an email, you're welcome to email me too tonight. But thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope you saw some interesting things. And Shannon, I'm happy to hand it back to you.
Well, thank you, Jenny, very much. That was so interesting and so spectacular to see those views that otherwise, you know, without you and your teams, and we'd never get to see those. So thank you, thank you. And one of the things that you said at the very end about the vibrancy and the colors, there was a question from Robin about that. She says, the colors of the organisms are amazing. Are the colors significant that deep where there isn't that much light?
That's a great question. I don't know, because I'm not a scientist or an expert in the deep sea biology. I'm trying to think. I don't know. You know, I just can't answer that question because I'm not sure. You know, for a lot of animals that are in lit waters, is usually color means don't touch me, and I'm going to you. But in the deep where it's dark, I don't know. That's a great question. Why do they have these colors? It's a good one.
Well, here's another one from Norman, and it says the Bodega Canyon with the 10,000-foot depth must be beyond the continental shelf, right? How far is the edge of the shelf from our coast?
That's a great question. Thanks for clarifying that. So our continental shelf goes out about 25, 26 miles, and that continental shelf is relatively flat. A depth of, I'm talking in feet because most of us think in feet, but it's like 300 to 500 feet-ish deep. And then that canyon goes down, starts a couple thousand and goes deeper, way beyond the shelf break. So we call the shelf break where it's no longer the shallow shelf anymore, and it starts going downhill. And it's like a big river going under the ocean until what we call the abyssal plain. So that's on the western edge of the sanctuary. And how many miles from shore is that? I have to think here for a second. I'm estimating here it's about 40 miles from the coast. I'd have to double check on a map. But, you know, it's interesting when we send an ROV that deep, it takes hours to get that ROV down that deep. So the launch and the retrieval, you have to take a lot of time to plan for that because it's like going down. And it's pretty... Still going. It's kind of the boring watch to be on because there's not that much to see.
Sherry had a question. Do other coastal countries have something like our marine sanctuaries?
Yes, there are marine protected areas around the world, and they're all, every single one, there's many different flavors. So just to compare here, we have the state marine protected areas, which are up and down the coast of California, and that just goes up to 3 nautical miles in state waters. And though there's a range of those, even of some of them there's no extraction, some of them are no commercial extraction but recreational, okay, and some of them are this type of gear only, and basically trying to reduce pressure on those fisheries. National Marine Sanctuaries, we don't regulate fisheries at all. We help contribute data to the fisheries management agencies that do manage fisheries. So National Marine Fisheries Service is our NOAA agency that participates in the Pacific Fisheries Management Council, and they make large-scale decisions about fisheries up and down the coast.
Great, great. We'll get to more questions in just a sec. I'm a little remiss. I was supposed to do some plugging here and say thank you to everybody who joined us tonight. We had about 100 people, and thank you to you, Jenny, so much. This was amazing. Please stay connected to Sonoma Land Trust through our social media channels, which you'll find on our website. And also you can visit sonomalandtrust.org/nature at home to find a recording of this presentation as well as all of the other ones that we have done. Give us a day or two to get Jenny's up, but that's a great resource. And then also please join us for our next webinar, which is scheduled for September 30th. It's with Lorenzo Washington, and it will be, the title is A Peek into the World Wide Web, How Plants and Fungi Communicate Underground. Really fascinating as well. And also, please, as I mentioned earlier, Sonoma Land Trust is a nonprofit organization, which means that we are funded primarily from donations from good people like you. So I just ask that you consider making a donation, maybe join me in the way I do it is our monthly giving program. It's super easy. I think about it once a month when I see it come out of my bank, and I feel really good 12 times a year. And it also allows me to stretch and give a lot bit more than if I had just given it all at once. So, okay, so those are my plugs. And now we'll get back to some of these really good questions. Here's one from Richard. For those of us who worry about earthquakes and tsunamis, could you talk about the Mendocino Triple Junction and how well has that area been mapped?
I don't know much about that area at all, actually. So I can't comment on that. I know there's information on the web about that, but I'm not familiar.
Okay. Ellie wonders, what was the depth of that video that we saw at the football?
Ooh, the depth of the football. I'm taking a guess from my educated looking skills from all the video that I've looked at with the sanctuaries. And, you know, that's on the shelf. So I think a max depth of maybe 500 feet.
Okay.
That could be found on the Farallon's website to learn more, but because it's on the continental shelf, it can't be deeper than that.
Okay. Thank you. And Janice, what did you say?
I was just saying it might be a little bit deeper. I'm not 100% sure, but
okay.
Yeah.
Deep. Janice wonders, what about the drought? What's actually happening to the sea life featured that we saw tonight with our drought situation?
Well, the drought is definitely, I would say the biggest impact it has is that it's hurting our watershed very badly. The Gualala River and the Russian River and the Sacramento River, where salmon require to go to breed, and that's going to hurt salmon populations. So I'd say that's the biggest impact of the drought is that. What'll be interesting is if we do get big atmospheric river events later, that affects the ocean life more because you get this huge deluge of fresh water, and the intertidal areas can be impacted by that if there's a lot of fresh water sitting around because it's a little bit lighter, it sits on top of the water, or the salt water stays down. So a little bit more of a effect when we have heavy rains, and then outflows of debris too from that. But I don't think there's too many other effects of the drought on the ocean. It's mainly the watershed that is suffering, which some of the salmonids really rely on.
Yes. Thank you. Let's see, we talked about color. Here's one from Melanie. How long can the bamboo coral live for?
They can live a couple hundred years, and I'm not sure of the upper reaches, but there's a black coral that has been documented at 4,000 years. So yes,
Wow.
long-lived species, black corals can live that long, and that's just what we know. Who knows? There might be more.
Wow.
So bamboos can be hundreds of years, and so the ones that we saw that were like probably 3 to 4 feet tall are probably a couple hundred years old.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Richard wondered, can wind turbines be placed in marine sanctuaries?
Well, they can't be placed right away. I think that I believe there would have to be a permit requirement, and that would need to be in consultation with several agencies. Anytime we work with a partner to put a buoy or an instrument in the ocean to learn about it, they have to put in for a permit and document the impact that that instrument would have being in the water column, and also document the benefit. And then it's weighed. And I think with renewable energy, it's something that we're watching to see, because we have a lot of National Marine Sanctuary waters on the coast, and there's also a lot of interest in wind and wave energy. So I can't say for certain, but it would require a lot of environmental review and effort with other agencies to consult on. But I don't think I could speak directly to that answer of a yes or a no. I think it depends, I believe.
Yeah.
But I'm not the superintendent or a manager, so I'm not sure I can answer that one 100% accurately.
And probably evolving too, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, so Savannah wonders, does the CO2 scrubbing that marine life performs in these areas help air quality above the water as well?
That's a good question. So that CO2 scrubbing are specific to these bacterial mats that live in some deep sea areas in the bigger ocean. And they've been documented that they can actually take CO2 out of the water and bury it in the sediment. I don't believe they affect the air levels of CO2 in that area, and it would have to be a massive scale to affect it globally. There's so many different ways carbon moves through the system on our planet, but it could be one tool. Another thing we're doing at sanctuaries and NOAA is looking at the blue carbon concept, which are living habitats that can remove carbon out of the water and out of the atmosphere and bury it either in their tissues or as they sink to the seafloor. And we're studying that to learn more about that. Seagrass, for example, can absorb carbon dioxide out of the water and actually buffer the pH in the water. So we're finding it to be eelgrass habitats are extremely important to protect. And we have those right near our coast in Tomales Bay and our asteros. So we really want to protect those blue carbon habitats.
That's excellent. That's excellent. How are we doing on time, Corby? I think we're doing well, but just stop me if I'm going over. Is there much archaeology findings in the sanctuary?
In Cordell Bank, we haven't seen anything, but there are quite a few shipwrecks in the Greater Farallones Sanctuary. Some of them were old shipwrecks from back in the gold rush. And, before we had a lot of navigational aids along the coast, there's a lot of trade going up and down on the Redwood Coast for lumber and butter and all sorts of things. And there were, rocky crags. That's what makes the Sonoma Coast so beautiful, but not so great for boats until navigational aids became more available. And so there's quite a few old shipwrecks on the coast. And then there's some bigger ones out unfortunately, from boating accidents, like the Puerto Rican and the Luckenbach, that were big ships that were damaged or in a collision and sunk, and actually leaked oil for a long time. So there are plenty of those around as well. And so that's why the Coast Guard is such an important partner for navigational aid and supporting safe boating.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Let's see, Frederick wonders, is I'm gonna probably mispronounce this, but Chumash, Chumash?
The Chumash?
Yeah, NMS between Monterey Bay and the Channel Islands, is it still under consideration? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I know what you're talking about. So the Chumash site is a proposed National Marine Sanctuary in the area between Monterey Bay and Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. And the Chumash are a tribal group that live and use the Channel Islands, have historically and still use it today, and have proposed the Chumash National Marine Sanctuary. And it is still in the review process. And actually last year, Nautilus explored some areas in that proposed site and documented some of the marine life there. And those videos from those expeditions are on YouTube. You can just look up Nautilus expeditions and you can search all the different areas that they've dove, and all the video footage is there. So yes, that's
Nice.
exciting. We'll see what happens with that.
Thank you, and apologies, Frederick, for butchering that question, but thank you for rescuing it. Let's see. Have you used, or will you in the future use sail drones to map the seafloor in the marine sanctuaries?
I'm not up to date on that, but I know that NOAA is testing that technology, and I don't think we've used it yet within our sanctuary. I'm just trying to remember. We might have. I can't remember up to date on that, but certainly I think the more automated things that we'll be able to do that give us more information will be useful. We actually just deployed with National Marine Fisheries Service some drifting arrays for acoustic stations that were listening for marine mammals, and they're out there for a certain period of time drifting, and then they're retrieved and they download the data to learn about what marine mammals might be in these areas that are areas that we can't monitor because they're further away. We do have a hydrophone in an area between Greater Farallones and Cordell Bank, and this is an area to kind of build on that. So hopefully we will use that both for mapping and for other observations. I know there was a sail drone that just crossed an ocean, so wow. I think there'll be a lot of opportunity for that.
Excellent. Anne asks, what exactly is a Sea Grant College?
A Sea Grant College. This is an area I'm not so great on, but we have Sea Grant is it's an office within NOAA that is involved in fisheries and aquaculture development, and they have funding that they have for hiring people through Sea Grant to learn more about and participate in community fisheries and aquaculture. National Sea Grant, I don't know, I can't speak to it too much, but it is a part of NOAA, and okay. We have some different offices up and down California with Sea Grant, and often get to partner with some of their fellows.
Awesome, awesome. Can you address the status of kelp decimation? That's from Randy.
Kelp. Oh, kelp. Sadly, kelp has been one of the things that's really suffered from the warming of the ocean, and kelp really needs cold water and has not done so great in these warm water conditions that we've had. And so there's been just massive die-offs of the kelp, the bull kelp that we have that is common on the Sonoma Coast. And that bull kelp supports so many different species of fish and abalone, and urchins have taken over, purple urchins have taken over, and any opportunity for kelp to come back, the urchins graze away. So the kelp is in pretty big trouble, but the state has been monitoring it, and Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary has a program working with the state and other partners to figure out ways to potentially identify sites that could be used as restoration sites if the conditions were right, and could they keep urchins away from specific areas where kelp might grow really well. So there's a lot of testing going on right now with that. A very important network working together to try to bring back some kelp on the coast.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we have made it through all of our questions, and I see a lot of gratitude coming through on the chat feature, just people saying thank you so much. This is such great information, and some more resources too from the participants. So thank you, Jenny, so much for being with us tonight and for sharing all of this amazing work. And to your colleagues, pass along our thanks as well. It was a treat to sort of be on those vehicles with you, looking over your shoulder as you're looking over their shoulder. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was fun for me. I haven't been on the ocean in over a year, and I'm just like, oh, I miss the ocean. So it was really fun to look at those videos and share those with you. And I just hope you'll get out and enjoy the coast and make sure to take the moments that we can to replenish our spirit and energy. And the ocean is like the perfect place for that. So thanks to the Sonoma Land Trust for helping to create some special areas for us to enjoy nature as it is.
You got it. You bet. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you soon. Take care.